Welcome to the Hot Flash Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Anne-Marie McQueen, founder of Hot Flash Inc. And today I'm welcoming a younger Lauren A. Tettenbaum, also known online as the Counselor, is a millennial mom of two, a writer, a licensed social worker, and a former lawyer. Through her private practice, Lauren supports women through major life transitions. She also runs corporate workshops, and we're here to talk about her very first book. She's just 40, but she's written a book called Millennial Menopause, Preparing for Perimenopause, Menopause, and Life's Next Period. This is a timely, deeply validating guide for the generation that's been left out of the menopause conversation for far too long. And I'll ask her all about what she thinks of Gen X. I hope you enjoy our chat. I'm Anne-Marie McQueen, journalist and proud 50-ish woman, and we are here looking for the true truth in perimenopause, menopause, midlife, and beyond.
Opening our minds to other possibilities is not always easy.
Hot Flash Inc.
You're all woman to me. All right, Anne-Marie.
Lauren, welcome to the Hot Flash Inc. podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you because you're younger and people aren't talking about millennial pause. I remember millennial menopause. I remember when I saw that word hybrid, millennial pause, I thought, oh, that's really something, but it feels like it was a while ago now. So first of all, place yourself. How old are you? Where are you in this?
I'm 40.
Okay.
And some medical providers would say I'm perimenopausal based on clinical symptoms. Some would say I'm too young. I am doing what works for me, and I encourage all women to do that. But the point of the book is that I didn't know anything about perimenopause, menopause, and I want women to know, to feel prepared, and to have agency to get the healthcare that they need and deserve.
Okay. And you have a really interesting background. You're a social worker and a lawyer. So how does that work together in the work that you do?
Sure. So I should clarify, former practicing lawyer. I no longer practice, and that's I'm covering my butt here. So I'm never giving legal advice. But yes, I have a law degree. I have a background in law, and it does still pop up, even though I'm not giving legal advice, because I've always been an advocate and always been wanting to use my voice to create positive change. And that pops up in the work that I do as a social worker, even in clinical therapy and individual therapy, couples therapy, and through the book. I write and speak about, quote unquote, women's issues, women's rights. And so my background in law, policy, etc., does play a role.
Okay. So what does the menopause conversation look like right now to you guys? Like, is it just a bunch of crazed Gen Xers dancing around? Where do you fit and what's it look like?
So actually, my social media feed certainly looks like that, with all due respect and love and affection and appreciation. But I would say that for most of my friends, it doesn't. And it's funny. We know the social media algorithm is an echo chamber. So I would say that nearly all of my friends still know very little about menopause. And then they're hearing rumblings of perimenopause, or they're certainly expressing symptoms of perimenopause, but their providers are saying, you're too young, don't worry about it, we'll deal with it later.
Still. So I've said for a while now, I think the first symptom of perimenopause is denial. I know that it was for me. So does that make any sense to you or resonate with you at all?
100%, especially because the women that I see through my work are perhaps anxious, maybe feeling depressed, sadness, irritable, ragey. And those can be mental health issues, but also perimenopause. And women in general tend to dismiss themselves in terms of being a priority. They'll say, okay, yeah, something is different, but I'll deal with it later. I got to get the kids, then sorted with their medical appointments, or life is stressful. I'm just going to suck it up. And so they're sort of internalizing this narrative of just get over it. There's nothing we can do anyway. Suffer through it.
Right. And millennials' state of mind is, well, like many people, burnt out. You write boundaryless and buried. What do you mean by that?
I definitely think millennials are burnt out. Certainly millennial parents, but all millennials, we've been through a few recessions, a few wars, 9/11 marked our upbringing. And I think we're really exhausted by social media, actually, in general. I think that it's harmful to our mental health, this constant comparison game, this constant feeling on. I see a lot of anxiety in my peers around child raising and feeling like they have to be connected to their children at all times. That's a big debate with technology in schools, things like that. In general, millennials are pretty anxious. And while we're so connected, which is beautiful, we are also getting too much information and not the right personalized information.
Okay. And do you have any idea of how it's good, like how to get that personalized information?
I would say you have to find healthcare providers and community that work for you and that know what they're talking about. And unfortunately, as you know, that's not always so easy. We know that menopause is going to impact every single woman differently. So that doesn't mean that there has to be one doctor for every one woman, right? But you have to have a provider who's at the very least willing to listen to you, who's willing to say, let me look into that for you, let me refer out if I need to. And I think millennials really need to learn to not take everything on the internet as gospel, but at least to say, oh, this person is smart and will be my partner, my collaborative teammate in figuring something out for me.
Do you have a sense of where millennials are in hormone therapy? Because I was talking to someone who runs a company, a CEO, and she said, women just aren't wanting to hop on hormone therapy. And it's sometimes not that they know about it. They just, that's not their first route. And I wondered if you had a sense of where millennials are on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Millennials are still scared of hormone therapy. I did a survey when I started researching for this book a year ago. And the number one question was, doesn't hormone therapy or therapy for menopause symptoms cause breast cancer? Which we know is, the old ghost of the WHI. And that's still very much at play. And a lot of our mothers are still of that mindset and they weren't offered hormone treatment. So that is still absolutely the legacy. Women are saying, I have a sister who had breast cancer, so I can't even talk to my doctor about hormone therapy. Like, that's still the message. And that's part of why I wrote this book, because I really wanted to dispel the myths and encourage people to get accurate information that's individualized to them.
And what's your take about the breast cancer risk?
My take is that estrogen only has been proven to not cause an increase in breast cancer, and that there is a very slight risk with progesterone and estrogen, but it's very slight. And in general, women are usually eligible for hormone therapy unless they're actively contraindicated against it. But it's worth a conversation.
Okay. And just to clarify, the risk is with progestin, not progesterone. Like, it's with the synthetic form. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The actual bioidentical progesterone doesn't seem to carry this. It doesn't carry the same risk, but it's something I would like people to study more, that difference. Everyone's talking about trauma. I feel like it had I talk about coming to perimenopause with your bags, like, what you bring to it really is how you experience it. And trauma is just one of those overused words, but it's, how else do you describe the hard things that we've experienced? And so where does that fit in? And how are you processing it? Because Gen X, we didn't know. We were finding it all out in real time. Many of us developed ADHD and we didn't know it. And so I just wonder where it's at for you.
Sure. And yes, language is important, but it's also okay if you have a lowercase t trauma and that's been hard for you, right? Not you specifically, but everyone has shit. Excuse my language. And that can really impact one's experience with perimenopause or any other physical issue, because your body keeps the score, as you might know from that book. But really, your attitude and your mindset towards aging, towards menopause, that can play a big role in how severe your symptoms are. So you may have trauma, capital T, lowercase t, and it can make you feel worse. And so it's important to get the support that you need. And I say that in general. So whether it's a stressful work situation or difficulty with family of origin, or really severe physical symptoms from perimenopause, whatever it is, you deserve support and care.
Okay. When you were researching this book, what surprised, like what are something that really shocked you and surprised you?
Frankly, so much. I knew that menopause was the end of one's period, one's fertility. I didn't know the age range at which it happens. I didn't know about perimenopause and that it can last for several years. I didn't know that so little training was provided in programs for doctors and other providers. I didn't know that we were still getting dismissed by our own providers, but we certainly are. And I wasn't surprised, but still disappointed to see how little funding was invested in women's healthcare. So all of it was very valuable lessons for me. And I want to really be shouting them all from the rooftops and say, we need to be paying attention. We need to be talking about these, normalizing these issues, investing in these issues, and just making them more accessible in terms of treatment.
How important is it to you to figure out what you believe about menopause? Because I feel like if you believe that it's an estrogen deficiency, then you'll go one route. But if you believe that it's fluctuating hormones and it may reveal some other things, then you have a whole bunch of more options. I don't know, like how do you see it? Like what it actually is? Because there seems to be at the crux a discrepancy over what it actually is.
I'm going to answer it not quite using the terminology you use, but this is how I would describe it. It's you have to do what's right for you right now. And if you're trying the birth control pill again to see if that helps, and that's great for now, wonderful. If you decide to implement lifestyle changes like better sleep, better nutrition, etc., and that's working for you, also wonderful. So that's my mindset. And I think, again, it's important to have a provider who will collaborate with you and of course, check in with you. I think bone density scans should be offered much earlier, for example. But if you feel good, great.
What's your position on supplements in millennials and supplements? I'm curious because I feel like we got introduced to supplements and then me and my friends all went crazy on them. And now we're dialing it back because we're just like, we can't take all these supplements. They're too expensive and we don't know what they're doing. I feel like I keep asking you questions of like, what is this that I'm going through? Like for you guys, but it's so, you're a different generation. And I want to understand like how you view that.
I appreciate that. And I mean, one of the best things about writing this book has been connecting with women in different phases of life and learning and sharing and comparing notes. So thank you for inviting me to share my perspective. In general, my personal point of view is that I think supplements often are largely placebo effect. If it's not harmful to you and you like it, again, good for you, girl. That's my perspective. But we have to be careful about whether it is harmful. A lot of supplements can lead to, harm to one's liver or affect other issues that women are not getting told when they're buying things off the internet. So I think that we have to be very careful about what we're consuming, both mentally and financially and literally. And again, a lot of women don't feel like they can talk to about this with their providers. There's this sort of shame and that's got to go because we should be able to have open communication.
It's just crazy. Like, how could there still be shame about it? We have it on Oprah. Like, how is this? What do you think's going on still?
It's both the internalization of getting dismissed and then the outright dismissal. I mean, in the past year, when I've told my own doctors, wide range of doctors, oh, I'm writing a book about menopause. I mean, I've been met with very condescending. Oh, why? You don't need to worry about it. And it's like, first of all, I'm 40, so I would like to just talk about it. And second of all, that's so rude. I'm telling you, I'm writing a book.
It's so rude.
So rude. I mean, guess who said that exact one? It was a man, of course.
Oh, yeah.
But it's that condescension that remains very much part of this rhetoric. And so women, if they see all these influencers, for example, promoting supplements, maybe they're thinking, oh, I should be taking this. I don't even need to tell my doctor. I don't even want to tell my doctor because it's a non-issue when I visit the doctor.
Right. Right. Oh, what's your hope for the next generation entering this phase? Like, what are they? What's the next generation after you guys?
Gen Z.
Oh, Gen Z. Okay. There's not one in the middle. I didn't know if I was missing.
No. Yeah. So you could say zillennial. Like that.
Millennial.
Yeah. um Gen Z is interesting. So first of all, I hope for everyone, for all of us, to be more open about this. And I think millennials have done a good job of being more open and normalizing topics like fertility struggles or mental health in general or motherhood struggles, things like that. So let's keep talking, let's keep being loud. Gen Z is interesting partly because of their access to media and misinformation in turn. And one of those themes that I've been seeing among Gen Z, which is really interesting to me and kind of not in a good way, is their reluctance to be on birth control, for example. Overall, there's this sort of clean girl movement where they're not taking, medication that they might need. There's a mistrust of the healthcare system. We've seen that from COVID, et cetera. So it's a little worrisome, but I don't want to. I mean, I just did generalize. Let's see what happens. And, my door is always open. And I think that if any Gen Z member has questions, give me a call.
And so are you having any like experiences now that make you think you're starting this out?
So for me personally, I was hormone free for a little bit of time as I started writing this book. And, you're writing about all the symptoms and I'm thinking, well, gosh, check, 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 check. And I spoke to a menopause specialist and I went back on the birth control pill and feel incredibly much better. So, perhaps that's perimenopause. And now I feel good and I'm not, experiencing specific symptoms.
And I think for your generation, like a lot of people have done IVF, and I've heard a lot about the IVF journey and how that can impact. And I don't think we know enough at all about what multiple rounds of IVF have. Do you cover that in your book or have you come across it?
A little bit. I do interview several reproductive endocrinologists, and I talk a lot about the idea that many women are in their late 30s, early 40s, and are not yet done having babies, but perhaps approaching perimenopause and what that means. To the point about research when it comes to IVF or fertility struggles and menopause, my understanding is that there's somewhat of a correlation sometimes, but not yet, causation. And it's yet to be determined why, but some women who do have fertility struggles perhaps enter menopause earlier or have more severe symptoms. And, from a non-scientific perspective, that sort of makes sense, right? Like one's hormones are not functioning the way that we might have expected, or maybe a 30-year-old's does. So it's an interesting area.
The Beth Baer, who was on that show, Two Broke Girls, she wrote an essay, I think, for a magazine about how she felt like it made it harder for her, but she didn't really have any way to frame it or prove it, basically. And that's one of the things about perimenopause is you can feel that way. And if the evidence isn't there, other people aren't experiencing it. It's just kind of like, I feel like that was part of it.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I really appreciate that she spoke about it. And I think that theme is emblematic of what we're up against in this cultural conversation and with healthcare providers. It's like, well, I think something's weird. I don't know exactly why. I don't know exactly what, but I feel strange. But then Lauren, I feel for the women who are not getting heard when they say things like this.
When you did all those interviews, did you get a sense of the sort of gaps and overlaps and approaches to medical practice? Did you get that sense?
I did. I was surprised that some of the most brilliant friends of mine who are incredible doctors, they would say things to me like, I'm embarrassed, but I cannot answer your questions because I don't know anything about menopause. Then I also had some conversations with some doctors who don't specialize in hormone health or reproductive health, but midlife women's health in other areas, other fields. And they too still had the impression of hormones cause breast cancer. So that was really interesting. But then when I spoke to the providers who are involved in the Menopause Society and certified by them, they're following the guidelines more closely. And to me, that seems like the latest research and most accurate.
And if there's a small risk, because there is a small risk, there's a new study that the risk with progestin, even a small risk, like that doesn't hold you back from it. That doesn't bother you or personally.
Me personally, you're asking?
Yeah.
I think everything has a risk, and that's something that you should know about for sure and ask questions about and have those questions answered and then make decisions each day as you wish.
I think you guys are drinking less than we did. Do you drink less than? And I hate to ask you a question like this is millennial, but I feel like you're hipper to the booze impact and more people are quitting.
It's funny, and I'm sure intentional that was your next question, because I was actually going to answer your last question by saying drinking has, perhaps more of a risk than synthetic progestin. I don't know exactly, but
no,
it's not good for you.
Gosh, yes.
Yeah. Right. It ain't good. That being said, me personally, I've never loved alcohol, so it's easy for me to remind myself that it's kind of not that great for me anyway. I think millennials drink. I think Gen Z doesn't. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But I think mommy wine culture is very present in my generation.
Okay, very cool. So what's you've just written this book. What's in the next year for you?
So I still have my day job as a psychotherapist, and I work primarily with women in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. And I really feel privileged to be able to support them through life transitions, whether it's new babies, new jobs, perimenopause. Increasingly, my clients have been dealing with perimenopause, both as we age together and as new clients come to me because of now my background in this. So much needs to be learned and talked about. And I hope that we keep going as a community.
And you mentioned transitions, like these are things women in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. There's other transitions, getting married, leaving school and working. What's your sort of take on the squishiness in the middle of the transition?
I think that everyone needs and deserves support. I have my certification in perinatal mental health, and a stat that's often thrown out is up to 1 in 5 women experience a perinatal mood and anxiety disorder. And I think that stat is really important to know, and women themselves feel comforted knowing that it's common, right? It's not just them. But whenever I say that to people, I say, but even if you're not meeting the criteria for a mood and anxiety disorder, if you need support, you deserve support. And so if you're struggling with moving and becoming an emerging adult, or your family of origin, whatever it is, anything, you deserve support. And we know, of course, that these moments of physiological change, like the perinatal period, like perimenopause, do involve higher risk of mood symptoms. So all the more reason to set yourself up for success. I think knowledge is power. I think building a support team is really important. And just reminding yourself that you're not going through this alone, or you don't need to be.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Lauren, author of Millennial Menopause, Preparing for Perimenopause, Menopause, and Life's Next Period. I like the play on words too. It's cool.
Thank you. I love a pun. Thank you so much.
Hot Flash Inc. was created and is hosted by Anne-Marie McQueen, produced and edited by Sonia Mack. The information contained in this podcast is intended for informational purposes only and is not intended for the purpose of diagnosing, treating, curing, or preventing any disease. Before using any products referenced on the podcast, consult with your healthcare provider, read all labels, and heed all directions and cautions that accompany the products. Information received through the podcast should not be used in place of a consultation or advice from a healthcare provider. If you suspect you have a medical problem, i.e. menopause or anything else, or any healthcare questions, please promptly see your healthcare provider. This podcast, including Anne-Marie McQueen and any producers or editors, disclaim any responsibility from any possible adverse effects from the use of any information contained herein. Opinions of guests on this podcast are their own, and the podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about a guest's qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements and advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. This podcast is owned by Hot Flash Inc. Media.